The night encounter. Nathan couldn't remember the last time he felt the cold penetrate so deeply into every pore. Winter nights in the town of Hollow Creek always carried a chilling, gloomy breath. He only intended to drive through, but an unexpected work call from a colleague forced him to stop and search for a phone signal. Nathan's old truck let out a faint whine as he pulled over. He reached for his phone, his freezing fingers trembling as they swiped across the screen searching for a signal. Then, in that brief moment of silence, a light knock sounded from the window on the passenger side. The knock was barely audible, like a child playing. Nathan turned to look, and his eyes immediately met two small faces. They were two children, a boy and a girl, both dressed in old winter clothes. Strangely, they showed no signs of feeling cold or scared. Nathan rolled down the window just a bit, enough to hear clearly. "What's going on? Why are you out here at this hour?" he asked, his voice a mix of awkwardness and concern. "Mister, we want to get in the car," the boy said, his voice flat, emotionless. His eyes stared straight at Nathan, as if trying to pierce into his mind. In the dim light from the truck, Nathan could clearly see the child's pitch-black eyes, with no whites. Nathan instinctively pulled back, a chill running down his spine. "Who are you? Why are you here?" he asked, his voice trembling. Instead of answering, the little girl moved closer. "We just want to get in the car," she repeated, her voice steady and unchanging. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest. Part of him wanted to open the door, to let the children in out of pity for them in the freezing winter night. But another part, the one guided by logic and survival, felt that something was terribly wrong. There was something off about those eyes, black as the night. "Do you have your parents' phone number? I can call them for you," Nathan suggested, trying to stay calm. But both children kept their monotone voices. "Mister, let us in." Outside, the wind howled, as if trying to force Nathan to make a decision. The knocking on the door grew more persistent, louder, like an echo from a distant past. Nathan closed his eyes, trying to steady himself amidst the strangeness. "No, I can't," he whispered to himself and quickly rolled the window back up. The children's black eyes never left him, staring through the thin glass. Inside the truck, Nathan's breathing grew heavier, but the children outside remained still, showing no sign of leaving. One final knock rang out, harder, heavier. Nathan hit the gas, deciding to get out of there immediately. He only faintly heard a small voice behind him, weak but carrying a deep, haunting promise. "We'll be back, mister." As Nathan's truck sped off into the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was just the beginning. Those black eyes, as deep as an abyss, would continue to haunt him. A promise of an inevitable return. Indelible marks. Nathan drove the rest of the way in absolute silence. Even the sound of the car radio couldn't dispel the creeping sense of unease surrounding him. The strange child's final words echoed in his mind, clinging like a curse. When he arrived home, Nathan quickly got out of the car and locked it in a hurry. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him from afar. That night, he tried to fall asleep, but every time he closed his eyes, those pitch-black eyes appeared, pulling him into a bizarre, haunting dream. In the dream, Nathan found himself standing in front of an old wooden house, nestled deep in a dark forest. The black-eyed children stood by the door, staring at him, lifeless in their gaze. They whispered something incomprehensible, but Nathan clearly felt they wanted something from him, something invisible yet heavy. He woke up with a start, cold sweat running down his forehead. The clock read 3 a.m., the time when everything in the night becomes hazy and unsettling. He got up, went to the kitchen to drink water, and tried to calm down. Suddenly, Nathan noticed that the kitchen window was open. Cold wind blew in from outside, and he was certain he had closed it before going to bed. At that moment, a strange sound echoed from outside, a faint, childish giggle. His heart pounding, Nathan approached the window. He looked outside but saw nothing but thick darkness. However, the eerie feeling was stronger than ever. He quickly closed the window and drew the curtains, trying to shut out the rising sense of dread. The next day. The following morning, Nathan decided to share his strange experience with his closest friend, Jim. Jim was an amateur detective with a passion for researching the paranormal and unexplained stories. After hearing Nathan describe the black eyes and the eerie encounter, Jim remained silent for a moment, his face suddenly serious. "Do you know about the black-eyed children?" Jim asked after a few minutes of contemplation. Nathan hesitated. "I've heard about them online a few times, but I never thought they were real. They're an urban legend, but many people have reported encounters with them. The common trait is that they always want to get into someone's house or car, and if someone lets them in, they are never the same again," Jim explained, his voice filled with caution. Nathan's anxiety grew. He wasn't sure if he could trust what had happened the previous night, but the fear was real. "So, what do they want from me? And can they come back?" he asked, his voice trembling. Jim looked deeply into Nathan's eyes, as if to assess the seriousness of the situation. "Nathan, if they've come to you once, they might come back. And if they do, it's crucial that you never open the door to them, no matter what." Nathan nodded, but inside, he was still filled with confusion and fear. It felt as though an invisible force was following him, relentless and unforgiving. The remnants of last night. That afternoon, when Nathan returned to his car, he noticed something unusual on the passenger side window. There were small fingerprints, like those of a child, pressed clearly against the glass. The prints seemed fresh, still wet and cold, as if they had been made just moments ago. Nathan stepped back a few paces, his breathing becoming heavier. Part of him wanted to wipe them away, to erase any evidence of the black-eyed children's presence. But another part whispered that this was only the beginning of a series of events he could never have anticipated. At that moment, his phone rang, cutting through his thoughts. An unknown number appeared on the screen, no name displayed. Nathan hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone. "Do you remember us, mister?" A familiar child's voice echoed from the other end. Nathan froze, his eyes wide with fear. Tonight, he knew for sure they would return, and the true story of the black-eyed children was only just beginning. Knocks in the night. Nathan could no longer find peace in his own home. Every time darkness fell, he slipped into a state of tension he couldn't shake off. Those haunting black eyes clung to his mind, like invisible ghosts lurking in every corner of the house. That evening, Nathan decided to reinforce his security measures. He locked all the windows, double-checked each door, and even added extra safety latches. He turned on every light on the porch, hoping the brightness could fend off the looming darkness. But deep down, Nathan knew the light was merely a psychological comfort. The black-eyed children were not ordinary beings afraid of the light. They wanted more than that. They sought to invade his mind and soul. The strange sounds around 2 a.m. The first sound broke the silence, a light knock on the front door. At first, Nathan thought he was imagining things, but the sound repeated, steady and persistent, like an inevitable rhythm. Nathan's breath quickened as a cold shiver spread through his body. He sat upright, hesitated for a few moments, and then slowly made his way to the living room. As he approached the door, the knocking grew louder, carrying an invisible urgency. He pressed his ear to the door, trying to listen. From the other side, a child's voice called out, weak but clear. "Mister, let us in. We're cold." Nathan stepped back, feeling the chill of fear wash over him. He reminded himself not to open the door, no matter what, as Jim had warned. But the voice outside became more pleading, echoing in the stillness of the night. "We just want to be warm. Don't you feel sorry for us?" Nathan shut his eyes tightly, trying to resist the temptation. "Don't let them in. Don't let them in," he muttered like a prayer. But guilt welled up in his heart as he heard the child's voice quiver with desperation. "We have nowhere else to go." The child's voice cried again, this time as if on the verge of tears. Nathan struggled with himself, torn between the overwhelming guilt and compassion that threatened to cloud his judgment. Eyes at the window. Suddenly, another sound came from the nearby window. Nathan turned, and in that instant, he saw a pair of black eyes staring directly at him through the glass. The eyes showed no emotion, but carried a deep, unsettling presence, as though they understood Nathan's fear better than he did. "Let us in," the voice called out again, this time seeming to come from every direction. Nathan felt as if he were surrounded by these eerie sounds, and his fear peaked. Suddenly, the front door rattled violently, as though someone were trying to force their way in. The knocking became frantic, louder and more aggressive than ever. Nathan backed away, his heart pounding in his chest. Every instinct screamed danger, urging him to stay away from the door. Without hesitation, he rushed into his bedroom and locked the door behind him. In the darkness, he grabbed his phone, his hands trembling, and dialed Jim's number. The phone rang, but no one picked up. In his desperation, Nathan kept trying to reach him, but then the knocking suddenly stopped. An eerie silence fell over the house, so heavy that Nathan could barely breathe. He listened carefully, but all he could hear was the sound of his own racing heartbeat in the pitch-black room. The mysterious call. Suddenly, Nathan's phone vibrated, startling him so badly that he dropped it. A strange number appeared on the screen, an unknown caller. This time, a mix of curiosity and desperation made him answer without hesitation. "Nathan, open the door." A cold, monotone voice spoke on the other end, not Jim's. Nathan hesitated, the fear rising within him. "Who are you?" "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "We know you're scared," the child's voice responded, almost mocking his fear. "But we're not leaving until you open the door." A faint giggle echoed in Nathan's ears again, this time laced with the threat of something far more sinister. He threw the phone down and backed into the corner, panic flooding his senses. It felt as if the space around him was closing in, the walls pressing down on him. An unshakable haunting. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the knocking again, faint and distant, or the children's voices calling from outside, reminding him they were still there, patiently waiting. As the first light of dawn crept into the room, Nathan was still huddled in the corner, his body exhausted and his spirit drained. He knew the black-eyed children would not give up easily. They were specters of something beyond his understanding, and the story was far from over. With bloodshot eyes and a weary body, Nathan realized he had to find a way to deal with them, before it was too late. Seeking answers. As the morning sun cast its light into the room, Nathan no longer felt safe in his own house. The ghosts of last night lingered, like a shadow, clinging to him. He knew he couldn't continue living in this fear. He had to find a way to confront the black-eyed children before they returned tonight. As soon as daylight broke, Nathan drove to Jim's house. Jim was known for his deep knowledge of the supernatural, and if anyone could explain what was happening, it had to be him. When Nathan knocked on the door, Jim opened it with a look of surprise, though not completely. Almost as if he had been expecting Nathan to come. "You look worse than yesterday," Jim remarked, his eyes scanning Nathan's pale face and the dark circles under his eyes. "Jim, they came back," Nathan said, his voice trembling. "They stood at my door all night, knocking. I don't know what to do anymore." Jim didn't ask any more questions. He gestured for Nathan to come inside and carefully locked the door behind him, as though anticipating something might happen. Revelation. Jim led Nathan to his study, a room filled with old books and dusty documents about paranormal and ghostly phenomena. He pulled a thick book from the shelf, dusted off the cover, and placed it in front of Nathan. The faded title read, "Beings from Beyond, Secrets of the Black-Eyed Children." "This is the oldest reference I have on them," Jim explained. "It talks about entities from another world, not human, but capable of mimicking humans to deceive and infiltrate our realm." Nathan looked at Jim skeptically, unsure if he could believe what he was hearing. "So, what are they? Ghosts? Demons? Or something worse?" he asked, his voice shaky. "They're not ghosts," Jim said seriously. "They're primal entities, beings between dimensions. What they want isn't just to enter your house. They want to consume you, your mind, body, and soul. Once someone lets them in, they become the perfect prey." A cold shiver ran down Nathan's spine as Jim spoke. "Then how do I get rid of them?" "I can't let this go on," he said, almost pleading. Jim pondered for a moment, then spoke cautiously. "There's a way to deal with them, but it's not easy and could be dangerous. You must confront them directly. You must reject them with all your willpower and show no fear. They feed off human fear." The plan for tonight. That entire day, Nathan and Jim prepared for the confrontation. Jim gave Nathan a string of white quartz beads and a jar of sea salt, 2 items that could create a basic protective barrier against malevolent entities. "Spread the salt around the doorways and windows, and keep this necklace on you. But the most important thing is not to open the door or let them in, no matter what they say or do," Jim instructed firmly. "If you can resist them tonight, they might give up and leave." Nathan nodded, feeling a surge of determination rise within him. Tonight would be the deciding night. He would not let the black-eyed children defeat him again. The night of confrontation. As night fell, Nathan began the protective steps Jim had taught him. He spread salt around the doors and windows, wore the white quartz necklace, and sat in the living room with all the lights on. It wasn't long before the first knock came, the same sound, soft yet menacing. Nathan felt his body freeze, but he remembered Jim's advice, show no fear. He took a deep breath and called out loudly, "I do not allow you in. Leave immediately." A long silence followed. Then the child's voice echoed from outside, this time with a mocking tone. "You're brave, but you can't escape us." The knocking intensified, louder and more forceful, like a hammer striking the door. Nathan could feel the door shake, and a coldness seeped into the air around him. "Are you sure?" "We just want to play," the child's voice whispered, soft and tempting. Nathan felt an eerie pull in his mind, a strange temptation to open the door. He looked down at the quartz necklace and gripped it tightly, reminding himself not to give in. "I do not allow you in," he repeated, his voice more resolute. A sharp, angry scream pierced the night from outside, chilling and full of fury. Nathan closed his eyes, feeling a cold wind sweep past the windows, a final threat from the entities outside. Then suddenly, the noise stopped. No more knocking, no more whispers. Silence fell, as if nothing had ever happened. A temporary victory. Nathan opened his eyes, feeling like he had just emerged from a long nightmare. He stood up, checked around the house, and found that everything was intact. The black-eyed children had vanished, at least for tonight. However, he knew the battle wasn't over. These strange beings were still out there, waiting for another chance. But this time, Nathan was ready to face them, with all the strength and determination he could muster. A warning from the darkness. When Nathan and Jim returned to town from the cabin in the woods, they felt a newfound peace, seemingly lighter after the dangerous confrontation. The town's lights, though dim and simple, appeared as symbols of hope to Nathan. But as soon as Nathan stepped into his house, a strange feeling surged within him. Something felt off. Everything seemed to have returned to normal, but Nathan's intuition told him that this silence was only superficial. The unusual signs. Soon after returning home, Nathan began to sense the presence of something strange. He continued to hear faint knocks at his window at night, sounds he had previously dismissed as his imagination. However, this time they were softer, like distant whispers echoing from afar. One morning, while preparing breakfast, Nathan discovered a small note slipped under his door. It bore only a few scribbled words. "We aren't going anywhere." Nathan felt his throat go dry as he read the message. Clearly, the black-eyed children hadn't fully abandoned their plans to invade his world. Nathan immediately called Jim. When Nathan told him about the note, Jim wasn't too surprised. "I figured this might happen," he admitted. "They're persistent and rarely defeated in just one try." A deeper truth. Jim took Nathan to an old library on the outskirts of town, a place few people knew about but which contained many valuable documents on paranormal phenomena. Inside the dark, dusty library, they found another old, thick, and tattered book titled The Persistence of Dark Entities. Jim carefully flipped through the pages, pointing to a passage. The black-eyed entities can continue to exist and spread by instilling fear and doubt. When they sense that their prey has weakened or lost faith, they return, more patient and determined. Nathan felt a chill run through his body as he heard these words. He knew that the real battle wasn't just one night in the woods, but a long fight with his own fear. "So, what do I do next?" he asked, his voice filled with both determination and confusion. "We need to perform a stronger ritual," Jim explained. "Not just to drive them away, but to completely break their connection to you. This requires one final ritual, performed at their weakest point, 3 a.m., when the power of darkness is at its peak, but also most vulnerable." Preparing for the final ritual, Jim and Nathan prepared for the final ritual with more determination and care than ever before. Jim handed Nathan an old notebook detailing every step of the ritual. "We need a special place to perform it. A place where the connection to the darkness is strongest. And there's only one suitable place, that cabin." Nathan hesitated, reluctant to return to the cabin in the woods again, but he understood that this was his last chance to free himself from these dark entities. The return of the darkness. The two returned to the cabin as night fell, bringing with them the necessary items for the ritual: black candles, special herbs, silver charms, and an ancient mirror. The tool that would be used to reflect the darkness back to where it came from. As soon as they entered, Nathan felt the air colder than usual, as if the darkness in the cabin had thickened and become denser. The distant whispers returned, hidden among the rotting walls. Jim began the ritual, chanting in an ancient language, the candlelight flickering over his serious face. Nathan stood inside the protective circle, clutching the silver charm tightly. As the ritual progressed, the giggling of the black-eyed children became clearer, almost as if they were surrounding them. "We told you, you can't escape," a familiar voice echoed from the corner of the room. Nathan saw small figures start to emerge from the shadows, their empty black eyes staring at him. Jim shouted, "Don't look into their eyes, Nathan. Focus on the mirror. Use it to reflect their darkness." The final confrontation. Nathan obeyed, directing the mirror toward the black-eyed entities. As soon as the mirror reflected them, a strange light erupted from its surface, spreading across the room. The black-eyed children screamed in fury, their hands reaching out to grasp Nathan, but they were blocked by the protective circle. Jim continued to chant, his voice growing stronger, and the light from the mirror grew more intense. The black-eyed entities began to fade, their deep black eyes seemingly consumed by the light. "We're almost there," Jim shouted. "Nathan, hold on to your faith. Don't let fear take over." Nathan felt exhaustion spreading through his body, but he was more determined than ever. "Go. Return to where you belong," he shouted, putting all his strength and will into those words. And then, the black-eyed entities vanished, dissolving into the darkness as if they had never existed. The light from the mirror dimmed, and the cabin returned to its eerie silence, but this time without a sense of menace. The light of liberation. Nathan and Jim left the cabin, exhausted but relieved. As they stepped outside, the sky began to lighten, the first rays of dawn pushing away the forest's darkness. Jim turned to Nathan, satisfied. "You did it, Nathan. This time, they're truly gone." Nathan nodded, knowing that this battle had ended. He had defeated the shadows of the night, not just with the power of the ritual, but with courage and unwavering will. Nathan's life would never return to normal, but this time he knew he was truly free from the black-eyed children and their darkness. A victory well earned after the long nightmares. The never-ending nightmare. In the days following the final confrontation with the black-eyed children, Nathan began to feel a sense of peace return. He had survived the harshest trials and felt a new freedom, as if the darkness had truly been pushed away. However, that feeling did not last long. One night, as Nathan drifted off to sleep, he began dreaming of strange scenes. He found himself standing before the wooden cabin in the forest, but this time it looked completely different, clean, bright, and new. The front door was wide open, as if inviting him inside. Children's laughter echoed from within, no longer the terrifying sound he had once heard, but innocent and joyful. Nathan stepped into the house, feeling drawn by an irresistible force. The children appeared around him, but their eyes were no longer black and empty. They laughed, holding hands and dancing around him. "We just want to play now," one of them said, its voice friendly and innocent. The atmosphere in the dream seemed entirely different from the harsh reality Nathan had endured. He felt a sense of relief, as though these beings were merely ordinary children. But just as he was about to move forward, everything abruptly changed. The children stopped, and their eyes transformed, back to deep, lifeless black. "Did you really think we were gone?" one child asked mockingly. Nathan jolted awake, his body drenched in cold sweat. His heart pounded harder than ever. This nightmare was a clear reminder that the dark entities hadn't truly vanished. Seeking new help. The next morning, Nathan decided to consult another expert on the supernatural, Sophia, a renowned psychic with strong spiritual abilities. Nathan had heard of her from an old friend who once sought her help to resolve a difficult haunting. Sophia received Nathan in a small room filled with mystical items, candles, charms, and incense that filled the air with a heavy fragrance. Her sharp eyes seemed to see into his very soul. After hearing Nathan's entire story, she was silent for a moment, then softly spoke. "These entities have a persistent ability to cling on. They won't be easily defeated. They've embedded themselves in your consciousness, trying to return through your dreams and visions." Nathan felt despair wash over him. "So what can I do to finally get rid of them? I can't live with these nightmares forever." Sophia looked him in the eye, her voice serious yet reassuring. "The only way is to face them again, but this time within your own mind. They remain because you haven't fully confronted your deepest fears." The battle within the mind. Sophia suggested a different kind of ritual, not in the physical world like before, but a journey into Nathan's mind. "You must face them in the depths of your memory, where they've taken root. I can guide you, but the real battle is yours," she said. Nathan agreed, though he couldn't shake the uncertainty. Sophia began the ritual by lighting candles around him, forming a protective circle. She placed her hands on his forehead, whispering ancient chants. In an instant, Nathan felt himself pulled into another dimension, where reality blended with memory. He found himself once again standing in front of the familiar wooden cabin, but this time it was no longer a dream. Everything was vivid and sharp, as if he were stepping into a parallel world. The black-eyed children were waiting, standing in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with challenge. "You've come back," one of the children said coldly. "But you can't escape us forever." Nathan knew this was the final battle, not with external entities but with his deepest inner fears. He took a deep breath, clenching his fists. "You can't control me anymore," he shouted, his voice stronger than ever. "I'm not afraid of you." The children began to scream, their voices echoing with rage. They rushed toward Nathan, trying to shake his resolve with terrifying images and haunting words. But Nathan no longer felt fear. He only felt a growing sense of determination and the promise of release. He closed his eyes, focusing all his willpower on driving out the darkness. A brilliant light surged from his body, illuminating the entire cabin. The black-eyed children began to fade, their eyes dulling, returning to hollow figures. True liberation. Nathan felt himself pulled back into reality, breathing heavily but filled with relief. Sophia stood beside him, looking at him with satisfaction. "You did it," she said. This time, the entities are truly defeated. They no longer have any reason to exist in your mind. Nathan nodded, feeling an unprecedented lightness. He knew that this battle had not only been against external forces, but also with the darkness within his own soul. He had overcome his worst fears and reclaimed true peace. As he stepped out of Sophia's room, the afternoon sun bathed the world in a warm glow, signaling a new beginning. Nathan felt free, not only from the black-eyed children, but also from the haunting shadows of his past. Nathan's life was no longer an escape from darkness, but a journey toward the light. Calm before the storm. After the ritual with Sophia, Nathan felt a newfound sense of peace within his mind. No more knocking at the door, no more terrifying dreams, and no more chilling sensation of a ghostly presence. Life gradually returned to normal, and Nathan focused on work, trying to forget the recent horrific days. However, despite breaking free from the black-eyed children's grip, Nathan sensed that the darkness hadn't fully abandoned its intentions. Faint whispers still lingered at night like echoes from a distant past. He knew he had won, but he wasn't certain if the victory would last forever. One late afternoon, as Nathan was walking along the riverside, a strange feeling of unease crept in. He saw a small figure standing by the riverbank, gazing directly at him. It was a child, with the familiar, pitch-black eyes. "Did you think you'd escaped us?" A childlike voice echoed in Nathan's head, although the child's lips never moved. Nathan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, concentrating on the calm he had worked hard to build in recent days. When he opened his eyes again, the child was gone. He realized that darkness would always exist somewhere. But he was no longer a fugitive. This time he was the one in control. The guardian of light. Weeks later, Nathan felt the need to act decisively, not just to protect himself, but also to safeguard others from these dark entities. He began to delve deeper into the supernatural, learning how dark beings infiltrated the human world. Nathan reached out to Jim and Sophia, suggesting they form a group to investigate and defend against supernatural forces. "We need to understand them more, not just to protect ourselves, but to protect others too," Nathan declared with firm resolve. Jim and Sophia agreed, recognizing that Nathan had become a new person. Stronger, more resolute, and ready to face the darkness rather than evade it. Their team started exploring mysterious phenomena across the region, confronting not only the black-eyed children but also other sinister entities. Nathan gradually became a guardian of light, unafraid to venture into darkness to protect the vulnerable. The final confrontation. One winter night, Nathan's team received a report about a haunted house in a remote area. Locals claimed the black-eyed children had reappeared, this time targeting a small family living alone in that house. When Nathan's group arrived, they were met with a terrifying sight. The house was engulfed in thick darkness, and the sound of knocking reverberated constantly. Sophia sensed a strong presence of dark entities and warned everyone that this could be their toughest battle yet. Nathan approached the house without hesitation. He knew this was the final moment to end the threat of the black-eyed children for good. "Leave. Your darkness has no place here," Nathan shouted, raising a silver amulet that Sophia had given him. The black-eyed children appeared, clearer and sharper this time, filled with a sinister rage. "We never leave." One child spoke, its abyss-like eyes staring deep into Nathan's soul. Nathan stood his ground. He stepped into the protective circle set up by Jim and Sophia and began chanting incantations he had memorized from the previous battle. A strong light emanated from the amulet, illuminating the children. They began to retreat, their screams echoing through the darkness. Nathan didn't stop, channeling all his willpower into the ritual. "You will never return," he shouted, his voice resounding throughout the space. The amulet's light finally burst forth, like a lightning bolt that dispelled the darkness completely. The black-eyed children vanished with a thunderous explosion, leaving the house emptier and more peaceful than ever. Nathan felt genuine relief, as if he had decisively defeated the darkness once and for all. Eternal light. With the battle over, Nathan and his team sat by an outdoor fire, gazing at the starry sky. "We finally won," Jim said with a gentle smile. Nathan nodded, feeling the peace he had long sought. "But darkness is always somewhere, both in this world and within our minds," he remarked. "The key is never letting it take over." Sophia agreed, adding, "True strength isn't in destroying the darkness, but in maintaining the light, even when it's at its weakest." Nathan's life was no longer a flight from danger, but a long journey to seek and preserve light. He knew darkness could return, but this time he was more prepared than ever. Epilogue. The legacy of light. Nathan became a protector, not only for himself but also for others threatened by darkness. He had overcome the black-eyed children, But more importantly, he had overcome the darkness within his own soul. Nathan's battle is a story of perseverance, courage, and hope. It serves as a reminder that darkness is ever present, but light can still shine, even in the darkest moments. If you enjoy inspiring and insightful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to TMY Stories to continue this journey with me in future videos. And remember to turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. Thank you again for your support, and see you in the next meaningful story.